we have 513. That's a pretty solid score. And honestly, if you did all this and scored 513, you're probably going to get into med school anyways. So this is only just going to guarantee you a slot. You don't have to do anything else. You know, you have to just do these things. But it is a pretty rigorous performance place that exists there. There are 12 osteopathic medical programs that have direct programs as well. Only one that exists solely for the state of Illinois. That's the Chicago College of Osteopathic Medicine. They're located up in Oak Brook, Illinois. And they partner with the undergrad institutions. And if you go to this website, minimedicalschools.com, it will show you the list of all those direct programs. Typically, in these type of programs, you need to have a 1300 SAT, 30 plus on your ACT. They're usually 7 or 8 year combined programs. There are a few programs in the country that do not require the MCAT examination. So there's 2 programs that I know of. One is the LECOM, Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine. What LECOM does is that they have selected sites in the state of Illinois. So they've picked 4 colleges right now. Elmhurst University, Aurora University, Benedictine University. These 4 are in Chicago. And so you can get into this program. Those colleges are very small schools, but if you do well and keep their grade point average up there, you do not have to take the MCAT examination. And you have they only select like 2 to 3 kids a year per each of these schools. So imagine Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine, they have an entry class of about 150. If they have these programs all throughout the country, and they give 2-3 kids in each of those each year seats for their medical school, they have already filled 60% of their class by the time freshman year has already started. So if you're not part of this program and you apply to Lake Erie, you're really not only competing for all 150 slots, you're only competing against the 40% of seats that are remaining. So imagine the competition then. And this is what's happening not only in Lake Erie, this is happening in med schools all across the country. A.T. Still, Kirksville is doing the same thing. They've picked out certain schools, and I will tell you, this is not common knowledge yet, but inshallah, I've heard Bradley University will be having an affiliated direct med program in the next 3 to 5 years. They'll pick a site where the students will apply. They'll have to have certain criteria. I think it'll be a great resource in our community, but this is still 3 to 5 years away. All right, let's talk about allopathic and osteopathic. Before I go there, anybody have a question? I will have time at the end. We're almost done with the slide, but I'll have time at the end to answer a bunch of questions. Anybody have any confusion about anything at this point? Okay. Allopathic and osteopathic. So that's the MD versus DO debate. In the allopathic, this is the traditional medical approach. There are about 155 of these schools across the United States currently as of today. The osteopathic, they talk about a holistic approach, looking at body, mind, and spirit. This is not homeopathic medicine. I know back home you have like the, like the Khansad that sits in a shop and kind of does his medicine and from the shop, hasn't had a medical degree, but he's got the Ayurvedic medicine that he's rubbing creams on your, on your arms or your joints or anything. Osteopathic medicine is not that by any means. It is traditional medicine, but they do a lot more of the manipulations. They look at body, mind, and spirit together. There are 38 of these schools in the United States. About 6 years ago, the American College of Graduate Medical Education, what they did is initially there used to be allopathic residencies and osteopathic residencies, and they did not intermix. But practice-wise, you go to any of them, they all function the same. Actually, a lot of doctors in our community are DO doctors, which is totally appropriate. So what has happened is that back in the day, if you didn't get into medical school, there were other options to look at and say, hey, I don't want to wait, I want to try to get in. Some students would go to the Caribbean route, some may go home, say, hey, it's cheaper to go back to Pakistan or India, or go to Israel, or go overseas and get the degree and then come back. And so then they would go, they would try to get back in the system and have that opportunity to be physicians. Then they changed some of the rules, and this is like the constant thing about the colleges, is that they wanted to continue to make it, how do we make it competitive and really preferentially give it to our American students that are here? So first they try to get rid of the medical licensing examination. The USMLE that was taken foreign graduates were initially not allowed to take that exam. They would have to take a different type of exam, which was much harder. Then in the early 80s, they opened the doors up and said, you know what, in like 83 or 84, they said, okay, foreign medical grads can take the same examination that our American students take, and it was an even playing field. The only caveat is that they're scoring, to score the same amount that the American student had, you had to get more questions right to get the same score. And what happened? We're smart people, we figured out the exam, and we were scoring really, really well, and we were getting back into school. But it was an equal terrain. The U.S. students are taking, they scored, they would get a passing score like a 94th percentile. Our students would get 94th percentile and say, look, I'm as good as your American students, I can do this. And so they've been able to do that. Now what's happened is that in the last 6 years, they've completely got rid of the distinction between MD and DO students and made it all in one. This is done in effort to then kind of eliminate the foreign graduate. Because now there are more students applying in the allopathic and the osteopathic. It's like, you know what? If you're an osteopathic, you can go to a residency program here. And if you look in my program, you look at Dr. Jaffer's program, we have a lot of DO students within our programs that exist. And in fact, if you look at the residency program, both at Methodist and OSF, I would say over 50% of them are probably osteopathic students. So it's the same thing. They do the same coursework. Actually, the osteopathic might do more coursework on the manipulations and such. It's the same residency, it's the same licensing, and the costs are the same. It's not like it's cheaper to become one or the other. So now they've all sit in one umbrella, and now they push the other students to make it a little bit more difficult. There are Caribbean medical schools in option. There are a lot of schools that exist in the Caribbean. These 4 particular schools are probably historically the most prestigious and older schools. St. George's University in Grenada, Ross University, and I think they're now set up in Barbados. American University of the Caribbean in Antigua, and then Saba University, I'm not sure where Saba is, but Saba University also is probably the newest out of the bunch, but they're also there. These schools used to be the kind of pathway to kind of get back in. They have huge endowments, they have great connections with a lot of the hospitals in the United States. So the students that would get in, they would have 2 entering classes. They don't care, they want to make money. So they would have an August entering class, and they'd have a January entering class. So most medical schools will have an entering class of about 60 to 150 students. Their entering classes are 300 to 500 students. So 500 students come in there, and they will work you to the bone, because they want to make sure the cream of the crop rises, and who can't make it, they push out. And it's no loss for them. And they'll tell you straight up, hey, after the first semester, you're not going to be able to cut it. Don't waste all your money. I think we're done with you, and you're done. This journey is done. So very high cost, high tuition, high fees. There's challenges. Some of these schools do not get linked with American government programs for loans, and so you can't get a loan very easily. These 4 you can, that exist. Their class sizes are larger. You're on your own. The margin of error is very, very small. If you mess up your boards, if you don't do well in one of the classes, if you are struggling, if you're a mediocre student, you will not make it back to the residency. And the whole point is trying to get back here to the residency. So these have become harder. It's harder to get back in the residency program. The thing about these schools is they do have clinical affiliation. So you spend, in your 4 years, your first 2 years are in the Caribbean, and then you come to one of the East Coast schools or Chicago or one of the urban centers and do all of your clinical rotations. The clinical rotations is key to getting into residency. It means you get to see patients, hands-on interaction, do the things you need to do. I will say, in full transparency, I went to St. George's University. Love the experience. I would never recommend anybody to go to St. George's at this point. And I love the school. I do a lot of work with the school. I love their students. They work hard. But the margin of error is so slim now because of this new umbrella that has existed between allopathic and the DOs and MDs that it is almost suicidal to try to do this program. The other piece that I would say is these foreign medical schools. So this is the family that's saying, gosh, I'll show you the prices. And you might have a little bit of a heart attack when you see the cost, but hey, I'm gonna go send my kid back to Pakistan, or I'm gonna send him to India, or I'm gonna send him to Dubai to get the training that's done. It might be easier to get the admission, you might be able to get a seat over there. It is so difficult to get back into the system. You think you're saving time, you're like, high school Gibad, I'm gonna send my child to go back home, get their medical degree, they can be done in 4 or 5 years, 6 years, and then try to come back. What happens is that then they have to take their examinations, the USMLEs, what they used to have to do. The USMLEs process, there's 3 steps. It takes usually, to finish all 3 steps successfully, minimum takes 2 years. So you're adding 2 more years to whatever you're building onto the foreign process. What they've done now, and this is the wiseness, I guess, of the school systems, is they've gotten rid of the USMLE scores, the step 1 scores. Now the playing field is completely gone again. And we are just experiencing this over the last year, where this coming year, step 1 scores it's just pass-fail. So I can't differentiate a student who just passed their examination to someone who's extraordinarily high achieving. And so if that is eliminated, it's going to be very difficult for programs to take students from back home. And this is all done in an effort to kind of keep that foreign medical grad, because the 50,000 number that I showed you is all US. This does not even include the foreign pool that exists. And if you add them, you're talking a tremendous amount of applicants for those really critical spots. Going back home is susceptible to the country's politics. If there's a strike, everything shuts down. And they don't care about the students. They're like, okay, when everything's open back up, we'll go. So I've had classmates that I was in residency with that went to Pakistan to get their training. They had like 6 strikes during the course of their 4 years. So his 5-year medical school career took him 9 before he finally got done. And then adding the test time back and trying to get back in the country. The other thing that's become really difficult is the clinical exposure. There used to be a test called the Clinical Skills Assessment Exam, the CSA. It's a bane of any person who's gone through medical training. They used to have a test where you would go to a site, there would be 10 standardized patients, they would have you see each patient, write your impressions down, and then that's it. They would grade you based on how well you knew your English, how well you talked to the patient, did you wash your hands when you walked in the room, those type of things. They've gotten rid of that test because of COVID, and now what they're requiring for foreign graduates is say, hey, we need this many clinical encounters that you've done before you can even apply for the match program. And so if you're a foreign graduate from overseas and have no affiliated hospital here, no hospital's gonna let you in touch any patient. HIPAA's too strong, too many things. You might be able to go to somebody's office and say, hey, can I shadow you for a few hours and I need to get my 6 patient encounters in, and maybe come in that way. But they've made that even very difficult for foreign graduates. So there's hurdles and hurdles that have been put on to kind of keep people out. The last thing I would show you in the medical side is there are dual degree programs too. And this is, once you're in the medical field, you might want to get a dual degree, be it a MD, PhD, a master's in business with your doctorate's degree, master's in public health, MHA, master's in hospital administration, a JD, MD JD to be a doctor and a lawyer, or a MD DDS. These dual degree programs are helpful if you have aspirations of becoming in administration, going up higher in the academic ranks, or if you're just really a lifelong student and love to be in the classroom. These are the programs that exist. The only reason I threw this up there are sometimes financial incentives to do these programs. You're extending your training out by 4 to 10 years extra based on when you pick that, what type of program you pick. Some of these programs are done at the same time and simultaneously with your medical degree, and so it's a great opportunity to kind of get 2 things done while you're in the midst of your training early. All right, I do want to take a few moments just to kind of go over a handful of slides about the medical professions, and then we'll be done. What I threw up here are just a handful of different other things. So maybe your kid doesn't want to be a doctor, but there's something else that they're interested in. I want you to be aware of the costs that are involved in all the different things. So these are a handful of different types of professions. It's not comprehensive by any means, so I'm not trying to offend anybody if I missed your profession. I'm not trying to do that. There's the certified nursing assistant, medical assistant, EMT, paramedic, respiratory therapist, RN, which is a nurse practitioner, physician assistant, pharmacist, dentist, optometrist, podiatrist, and then physician. So you definitely need a high school degree. These you need some sort of certification, some type of training, college here, grad school. There are residencies that are involved in these programs, optional residencies here, and then fellowship training that is here. So if we talk about certified nursing assistant, and the monies that I put on here is just to kind of give you a ballpark of what exists out there and what the salaries are. And this is based on mean data in the state of Illinois. So CNA programs are short programs. In about 160 hours, you can get a certified nursing assistant degree. Your responsibility is really to like kind of help with feedings, dress patients, help take vital signs, answer calls for help. Probably work like in a nursing home type facility to kind of help out. The cost to become a CNA is minimal. It's like $500 to $2,000, and the turnaround is you can get a salary for about $30,000 to $40,000 a year today if you do this kind of coursework as a CNA. Medical assistant, a little bit more cost. It's like about a year's worth to get a certificate. 2 years if you want to get an associate's degree with that. Means you're like a 2-year college program. You can usually do medical records, handle insurance forms, collect labs. The cost to become a medical assistant, if you just do the certification, it's about $5,000 to $6,000. If you get an associate's degree, up to $35,000. Most between 15 and 20, you can get the degree. And the salary that these guys will make about is $40,000 to $45,000 a year. Emergency medical technician, working on an ambulance. It's about a 2 to 6 month training program. Lots of clinical hours needed, so about 100 to 350 hours of training. Providing urgent care. Usually the cost to become an ENT is the class. It's up to $2,000. And the salaries that they're commanding is about $35,000 to $45,000 a year. Paramedics is a little bit more technical, 2-year degree program. You have to do a little bit of the college level biology, math. Usually the costs are between $5,000 and $15,000, and their salary is about $40,000 to $45,000 to $50,000 a year. Respiratory therapists, they got a lot of exposure, especially during COVID, of all the frontline work that these guys do. These are the ones that handle the ventilators, kind of help with a lot of the frontline stuff. You need a bachelor's degree here. It is about, again, $10,000 to $15,000 for training, but they command 70 to 80, and at the height of COVID, they were making almost 6 figures, kind of taking care of these patients. Nursing, there's levels of nursing, so you can get an associate's, a bachelor's. This is just a BS in nursing program, and maybe if you want to do a grad school program with it. Your costs, depending on how much you put into, is about $15,000 to $100,000 for undergrad cost. The ones that usually, once they kind of get through their bachelor's, is their cost, and then as they go further up, usually they'll have the hospital sponsor them for further training, so they can get their master's or higher level. These nurses are commanding anywhere between $70,000 to $90,000 a year. This last 2 years, it's been kind of crazy. I think some nurses are commanding in excess of $120,000, $130,000, depending when they're traveling to other places. Nurse practitioners, it's even more training. Nurse practitioner programs, it takes a little bit extra time. Costs usually to become that is about $70,000 to $200,000, and salaries for the practitioners could be pretty large, anywhere between $120,000 to $145,000 if you have like higher levels of nurse practitioners, like a certified nurse anesthetist, neonatal nurse practitioners, or medical nurse practitioners, anywhere between $100,000 and $150,000 that exist. PharmD or pharmacists. The PharmD programs, these are the costs that are involved for the 4-year degree. It's anywhere between $65,000 to $200,000, depending on your undergrad institution that you go to, and if you're out of state. Most of the pharmacists, if they're commercial, the salaries are between $120,000 and $160,000. Dentists, you remember you have to do 4 years of college, and then you have to go to dental school, and then could do a residency, or you could start working. So your college and dental school costs are going to be in excess of $200,000 to $450,000 in your cost. And then the salaries that you would command, usually in basic dentistry, is about $150,000, private practice dentistry, about $250,000, $300,000. But that, you'd be running a business, essentially. Optometrist, you have your undergrad, 4 years of optometry school, optional residency. This is just the cost of optometry school. I didn't add, in these higher level training, I didn't add the undergrad cost. For undergrad, you can put your own monies in it. It's going to be anywhere between $50,000 to $200,000 in your undergrad. Most kids get scholarships. That's why when we talked about which college do you go to, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what college you go to. So keep your costs down if you can. But the salaries for optometrist, if you're working in a private practice, $120 to $145. This is where the cost and the salaries don't reflect each other. You're paying a lot of money to become an eye doctor. You're not making as much money for that. So there are a lot of bankrupt eye doctors that are out there that come out of school, start practicing, try to work, and they can't pay their student loans off because of the costs. Podiatry is a field that's fast growing, especially with the high diabetes population. They take care of the foot. And in most podiatric programs, they take care of the knee down or from the shin all the way down. And so they take care of like the diabetic foot, bunions, like corn removals, hammer toes, those type of things. Really, it's a surgical subspecialty. So you do a 4-year podiatry program, you do 3 years of residency, and then maybe a fellowship if you really want. This is again, just the podiatry school itself is about $220,000 to $350,000, depending on where you go. Plus your undergrad costs. The salaries are anywhere between $180,000 to $280,000 a year. And then lastly, physicians, 4-year medical program, 3 to 6 year residency program, and then fellows. Depending on what you do, the med school costs are astronomical. I mean, it is now costing anywhere between $250,000 to $500,000 for tuition and fees. A lot of our med school costs that are there are so expensive right now, and so what we're seeing is, like, if you look in the state of Illinois, if you go to the Chicago College of Osteopathic Medicine, their tuition costs alone are $70,000 a year. So primary care docs will make $180,000. This is your generalists to about $300,000. Their subspecialists make anywhere between $180,000 to $600,000 a year. Not to say that there's not above and beyond or below any of this. All right, I think that's it. Questions? I know I threw a lot of information, and hopefully I didn't scare anybody. I'm sure all the kids are like, oh my God, my parents are going to yell at me when I get home. But, hold on, yep.
It's a general question as from my engineering background. Look at the coursework that we used to do traditionally. Now we are looking at a whole different landscape with the evolving technology,
Yeah.
AI and other aspects of technological advancements.
Yeah.
So now for medicine, we are looking at 14, 15 years, and what's out there in terms of technological advancements and how that impacts people who are going to be coming out after 15 years, and is there any thought process going into?
Yeah, so twofold. It is evolving. The amount of knowledge that has to be learned is it's too fast right now. I mean, the volume of knowledge that is there, especially with genomics and precision medicine that is existing, there's too much to learn now. And so then what schools are doing is that they're trying to consolidate that learning. So the traditional approach would be, you go to the class, I'm going to take physiology, you spend a semester in physiology. I'm going to take pharmacy, do pharmacy. Now what they're doing is they're doing a more of an integrative approach. Instead of doing like this anatomy or physiology or pathology, we're going to do the heart. And we're going to talk about the anatomy of the heart, the physiology of the heart, the pharmacy, just the heart for whatever period of time. Now we're going to do just the eyes or just the stomach. And now they're doing more of a systems-based approach because the volume of information has gotten so large. And they're leveraging a lot of the data and technology that exists within these systems. So if there is like AI-based training, one of the research projects that I work on currently with my trainees is we use VR technology. And so I've partnered, and this is where the exciting part of medicine, I've partnered with the computer science folks at the University of Illinois. And so I have some grad students under me, and we're building virtual reality procedures where we can do like basic procedures that I would do in a delivery room, like putting IV line in their belly button or putting a chest tube in their lung, and it's all done virtually. So we've created, they take care of the programming side, I do the technical side, And now when my clinician wears the goggles, they feel like they're in this virtual environment, the AI environment, and they can do the procedure there. This is how training is coming to meet that demand. There's a huge crossroad, and Peoria, I think, is one of the coolest places for it with our simulation center. There's a huge crossroad of biomedical engineering that is occurring at this day and age, and I think that is some of the exciting pieces of the ongoing learning. That traditional, like, I'm going to become a doctor, I'm going to go sit in a clinical office, and that's all I'm going to do. That's almost gone by the wayside. I mean, even in your clinical office, you have to think about process improvement, how flow mapping is in your clinic, because if you don't evolve to make it more efficient, you're going to die. I mean, the computer technology goes too quick, and if your efficiencies aren't there, somebody's doing it already. Either your office is going to get bought out by a large corporate, or somebody's going to surpass you. And patients have so much access to care now that they're like, hey, if you can't provide me if I can't get video consultation from you, Dr. Jaffer's going to give me video consultation, I'm going to go start seeing him. And so the competition for patients has become a lot harder. And that's why those dual degrees like MPH or MBA, I mean, if you took a survey of physicians just generally, you would find a lot of physicians like, man, it's really important to have a business background or an engineering background or, as you're going through. You had a question, right?
I have a question about optometry. How many years one will be needed to get the residency in optometry?
For optometry?
Yeah.
So for optometry, you do the undergrad, 3 or 4 years in the college, and then after college it's a 4-year optometry program, and then you're done. And then you can start working at the LensCrafter, or you can work in your own private practice. If you wanted to do specific residency in optometry, maybe you want to look at the person who has high blood pressure in their eyes, or maybe somebody who has diabetes and eye issues, then you can do a 1-year resident. It's usually a 1-year residency. Or if you want to just do contact lenses and you want to specialize in contact lenses, they'll do a specialty. But mostly it's just the 4 years of college and then the 4 years of
4 years in medical college or in
your regular college. So like if you go to Bradley and get your undergrad degree, get into optometry school, do optometry school, and then I have 2 sisters that are in optometry, so very familiar with your, yeah.
What's the average salary of your specialty?
Of my specialty, if you're in academics, I mean, anywhere, it starts about 220, and then if you're in private practice, it can go up to like 600, 700, 800.
Speaking, following on AI, advancements of AI,
Yeah.
ChatGPT, and all these kind of things, are there specialties that are in danger down the road, with advancements?
In the medical side?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like pathology or
So pathology doesn't do so much. A lot of what happens is these guys get into like internal medicine or pediatrics or wherever, and then they will work with a simulation center like AI. The field that's become hot is called informatics, is what the field is. So it's physicians that are learning the crossroads of the AI technology and then doing that work. So I have a lot of colleagues that work in the informatics section over at the hospital. And so they handle the electronic health record, some of the more tech stuff, and integrating it.
are there specialties that could be in danger down?
Oh, in danger? Not necessarily. I think there's a lot of volume of work to be done. I think just there's nuances of each of the specialties. So like in like AI training, we're not using it to kind of do diagnostics, but like when we do cardiac interventional cardiology, it interferes with the radiologists that are doing their work. And with access to care and these databases, the radiologist is not going to be as in they're not making the elite salaries like they used to. But so there's kind of fluxes in those parts of the field, but there's enough volume that is there, and depending on where you're at, the access to the technology is not there that readily either. So yes.
So, you mentioned about the feeling and need to be doing like dual, like
Yeah.
MBA, MD, MBA.
Yeah.
What is the reason for that? What are
To get an MBA.
What are you actually seeing that you need that?
So when I started, I thought I was just going to be a doctor, right? I was going to be a doctor and work and just do my clinical practice and be done. I've been in the academic side, and also you can speak in and jump in any time. But what has happened over the years is that for me, so I don't know how to politically say this, for Muslims to get involved into the healthcare field and get involved in the advancements of the politics of healthcare, it has become more and more clinically relevant for us to be even in those conversations to get ourselves out of just being in the clinical practice. So I've had to go back to do training, to get like more educational training, to get more. And so if I ever have, now if I don't want, I'm a motivated guy, I want to be the guy, so I run the division right now. I wouldn't have had that opportunity if I didn't do those kind of baseline trainings. Now, if I wanted to be now the president of the hospital, or if I want to get onto the boards of the hospital, those are the things what will open those doors up for you. If you have no desire for that, and historically we have not, and they know that. And so they kind of keep us kind of in check as a result of that. And so if you want to have those opportunities to really break the next barrier, and I encourage any of the students, I mean, those doors didn't exist before.
So if kids are doing, like, they're going for an undergrad or
Yeah.
high school.
Yeah.
You mentioned about all those volunteers.
Yeah.
Different programs. So what would you recommend them if they have a career path towards medicine?
Yeah.
What would you recommend them to do in like school and college?
Yeah, so in undergrad and college, what I would recommend is your summers, you have to find a way to get involved. So that's doing volunteer work, if that's in the hospital. I would look at research labs in your own undergrad institution. So if you have professors that you made a good bond with in biology or chemistry, I would talk to them and say, hey, do you have any research opportunities to take on a student? It may not be of medical nature. It may be that he's looking at the vertebra of fish and he's studying the life cycle and feeding patterns of that fish. It doesn't matter. What's challenging is to get a paid position that's an internship that's going to pay you $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to be a research student for the summer. If you can't find those, try to get in as a research student with the intent of, can I get enough work done so that my name can be on a poster, in a research paper, what significant contribution can I make to help with that? That is critical. I would say your summers have to be balanced with that. Study for your MCATs. I would say get involved in some of the, at least you don't have to be involved a lot. In college you can be involved in a very few things, but make it meaningful. Join the pre-health club or join a volunteer organization that gives back towards the community. Do those type of activities. If you go overseas, like every summer, say, hey, we go to India for 6 weeks a year. When they go, get them connected with somebody over there so that they can sit in their clinic and get an opportunity what third world medicine looks like. Those things make a big difference. So that's what I would recommend.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for such a valuable presentation. You mentioned two different routes where a child can go to high school and then go undergrad and then do med school, or they want to do or high school and then get into med school, which is more competitive since it's a more intensive program. My question to you was that, say, if a particular family would want to go to the UK or like to the Middle East, and then the child's in their younger years for a better job opportunity or other things, and then they would want to come back afterwards. Have you felt that those kids, when they're coming back for high school, I mean, if you're keeping the education system, I mean, the American education system is different, worldwide they follow the UK education system. I'm not considering the Indian board schooling or like the